Welcome. This is the spoiler review of every episode of Volume 1's Love, Death, and Robots in preparation for Volume 2 coming out this Friday, May 14th, which we are also going to review. I'm Matt. This is the other Matt. You got me to watch this show. You thought I would like it, and you were right.
Yeah, good. I'm right about every time. That's me. So just trust everything I say. That's not true. Matt, I had a good feeling.
Not.
I had a good look. We disagree, but I thought you'd enjoy this. You did. We're talking about every episode. We got 18 whole episodes. If you haven't watched this stuff, it's an anthology, sci-fi, love, death, robots. There's gore, there's nudity, all sci-fi kind of things. Very quick episodes, ranging from like 6 minutes to 20 minutes. I feel.
Yes.
So they're
16-minute is the longest one.
Okay, 16 minutes. But yeah, there's 18 episodes. We're going to talk about them. There's spoilers here. So definitely, like, if you haven't seen them and you don't want to hear spoilers, please click off. We have a different video where we talk about our top 5 recommended episodes. You can check that out. But we're just going to breezily, quickly talk through them and say which ones we liked, what we didn't like. And yeah, celebrating the old volume. I'm glad you liked it, though, Matt. Like, I'm glad I was right about that one. It's a good thing.
I did. And the nice thing about it is that because all the episodes are standalone, you can really love the ones that work, and the ones that don't, you just kind of throw off. I think it does fall in like Black Mirror. As overall, it feels like the episode kind of needs to have a twist.
Yeah, everything always has like the and then.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, it doesn't always need that. But I think the through line of Love, Death, and Robots is that even if the storytelling is a little weak, they usually make up for it with action. Or if the action's a little weak, it has a really potent, not animated style. Or, there's always something to really enjoy about an episode. And the episodes that are bad, quote unquote, are more like just like, okay, whatever, 5 minutes of my life. It's nothing that you're going to be like, well, that was terrible. At least I didn't think, and most majority of people don't. But
no, at worst, and a lot of the action ones kind of fell flat for me, where maybe if I was like a kid watching a Saturday morning cartoon, it would be nice, but I was more into the sci-fi parts. But let's go with first episode. Now, the episode order is different, whether you're in Canada or America. For some reason, it's because I've got control of them. We're doing the Canadian order. You're probably not Canadian. I'm sorry. But
no, it's okay. Some of you guys who are Canadian, shouts out. This is your time to shine. You get the Love, Death, and Robots correct order of the episode listings.
Right. Very kind of you. You Americans always like to patronize us. So, first episode.
Look, I'm sorry. I apologize.
And I think
my country.
It's interesting, though, because the first episode in Canada is called 3 Robots. Now, it's very cutesy. It's very bright. It's very colorful. It's very funny. Nobody gets decapitated. There's no sex or nudity. This was my first introduction to the show. At first, I thought it was going to be a bit cringy because the way the characters are introduced, I was like, oh, this kind of feels like Michael.
There's forced profanity.
Yeah, and there's kind of, I was like, is this going to be like a Michael Bay kind of, the way he has his like real stereotypes? But once they got to the part with the basketball and the jokes they made about that, the comic timing was so well done. And it's basically, if there's 3 robots that are exploring the wastelands of like what humankind used to be like.
It's like a tour through a post-apocalyptic city. They're like, hey,
they're
stop,
tourists.
We're going over here. Each scene is kind of like a little self-contained. Oh, what did these humans do? It's a fun, but like you said, Matt, is that the 3 robots have very distinct personalities, and but it doesn't try to do anything more than just like make levity of the situation. Towards the end of the episode, when they get into like the whole turn of like, well, cats got opposable thumbs and then took over the world, that's when you're like, okay, it's a little bit silly. But I really enjoyed the dialogue and kind of like the emotion between the 2 robots. They had very distinct personalities and the way they bounced off each other over these very simple ideas of like, how does a human eat? Well, they put this into their orifice and then it goes into their internal vat of acid. And it's like just a fun way of looking at the human form and humanity from the lens of these robots. I'm glad this was your first introduction because I think out of all of the Love, Death, and Robots episodes, this one's kind of like the most the one that kind of gets it all, the theming of the show, but without being very adult. I mean, there's obviously a lot of fuck words and stuff. There's a lot of swearing, but beyond that, it's not like overly grotesque or a lot of, a kid, quote unquote, could watch it and not be like super.
Yeah, like a kind of a preteen or whatever. Like if you don't mind them seeing a bit of swearing, it is. This one has it's a tough job because you have to have the 3 robots be confused enough about what humans did, but also be able to relate to it. And I feel like sometimes they fell over that line that they were walking, and where it can shatter the illusion a little bit. But I'd say for the most part, this one, like, I really enjoyed and I think was pretty funny and had some like pretty great ideas. And I think it was a really smart one to start off for us polite Canadians.
Yeah, to close off on this one, I agree with you. Like you said, if there was any sort of plot holes or any weakness in the plot, it was so quick. But by the time that I recognized, I was like, whatever. It's the core of the story is there. I had a good time with it. And compared to some of the darker and more insidious kind of episodes on this list, this one, I had good vibes from it. I chuckled. It was like, not so depressing. What's the next one we have, man?
The next one is, now you had said in our top 5 episode that is also on the YouTube and the podcast, Beyond the Aquila Rift.
Yes.
Now,
Beyond the Aquila Rift.
So this one is about a space crew that wakes up a lot further from home. And I feel like when I was watching this one, I was like, oh, this definitely, like, you can feel something terrible is about to happen.
Yeah, you're not sure what.
But it's like, and there's a lot of the ones that have a lot of nudity and sex, and maybe now or later we'll talk about, I felt like a lot of these episodes were very male gazy, where it was like almost always women that were naked, and there was a lot of women being sex dolls, and sometimes sex being thought of as like the enemy.
In this one specifically, it's basically this crew captain wakes up and he's like, oh, we've drifted off course. And he has an old female friend who's like, oh, you've arrived in the space station. You're way far away, but chill out. I'll explain. And then over the next 5 minutes, it's kind of more about their romance. And there's a very, not explicit sex scene, but there's a long sex scene here. And a lot of it, like you said, is male gazy. I mean, you get a picture of the dude's butt, and there's some male nudity in other episodes too, but the male nudity is often played for laughs, whereas the female nudity is very much like sexualized and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if there's anything about this episode I watch and I'm like, I could lose it, it's kind of the focus on the sex and their like very romantic relationship, but it needs
it though, because that's the whole
ending.
Twist and the payoff, right? Like it's the way she's seducing him. Okay, this is the spoiler version. So
we can talk about spoilers, baby.
Yeah. Now, I mentioned in our top 5 is that what I loved about this one is that this is very Uncanny Valley. It's like shockingly realistic.
The animation is probably the best.
Yeah.
Like as far as photorealism, Beyond the Aquila Rift is some of the best stuff I've ever seen.
Which is perfect, because the twist of the episode is that he's actually in a simulation.
None of it's real.
Yeah, none of it's real. And
it's half real. The ship did wind up way off course beyond the Aquila Rift, which is like kind of known space in this futuristic setting they have. So they're somewhere far in deep space, but instead of being on a space station with his friend, he's actually trapped in some ungodly it's like a spider
space kind of spider nest, very very matrixy, like they're keeping people there to either eat or like use as fuel or something.
And the girl that he thought was this long lost love is kind of this amorphous spider being that at first kind of appears in a female form, but then you reveal more of it, and it's this very grotesque. But the thing about Beyond the Aquila Rift and the cosmic horror genre in general is they don't show so much or explain so much at the end. He comes back into the simulated reality at the end, kind of coming full circle. So it's kind of left with this, well, are they there forever? What's going on? And that's the whole thing I like about Beyond the Aquila Rift is that twist at the end. It's that, it's gone not only bad, but unfathomably bad. And that's kind of it. There's no happy ending. And it's a lot especially if you're not into like deep space horror, you're like, what?
It was this one, and because it was the second episode and I wasn't kind of prepared for there to be a big twist and I knew something was coming, this one really like had my jaw on the floor, and I was like, because there's like a lot of great ideas. The animation is really stunning, and they just do a great job of you thinking something's bad, but this is kind of like such a treat.
Suspense.
Yeah. It's done really well. It definitely deserves being in the top 5 and one I'd recommend to anyone.
It's probably my favorite, if not like it's 1 and 2 of my top 2 favorites are always kind of battling for each position. But Beyond the Aquila Rift is like one of my favorite stories. I mentioned in the other video, it's also based on a short story by Alistair Reynolds. He's an author who also did another episode that we'll talk about later. Great sci-fi. I would like to talk more about it, but we have so many episodes to get through that I feel like just go watch it. It's 18 minutes. There's some sex in it, so whatever. But it's creepy. It's cool. It's fun.
Okay, next up, a lot different tonal shift. This one is Ice Age. I think it's the only episode that is purely live action.
Yeah, there's some CGI in it, but instead of it being all CGI, you got 2 live actors, Topher Grace and Elizabeth Winstead, best known as Ramona Flowers and Scott Pilgrim. They have a weird civilization living in their freezer, and it's about they keep opening. Every few scenes they'll open it, and it's like they progressing as a civilization. I thought it was fun. I mean, really, it's like that's the concept and that's the whole episode. I don't know how you thought about this one. It's fun, but it's not like as complex or
Yeah.
as interesting as the other ones. More played for laughs than anything else.
It was interesting. I think with a lot of these episodes, I think, okay, premise, the sort of the twist, and then I'm like looking for the payoff. This was a really interesting premise. Okay, what if a society could live in there, and would they think you're gods? What didn't really work for me is that at first when they see it, they're like, "Holy shit! Oh my fucking god!" And then soon after, they're just like,
It's just another thing.
Now they're in the nuclear age. Oh, they had bombs. Oh, they went away.
Topher Grace gets a nuke to the face, like a mini nuke, and it's kind of like burns his face a little bit. It's instead of going for a twist or some big psychological payoff, they're just like, it's funny, It's Topher Grace gets a nuke in the face.
And also,
LOL.
and with like the half of the ones on the list that I didn't like, it's a lot of times I would be left thinking, okay, what was the point? Like there were a lot of things.
Did you really not
but what
like
was the
this,
point?
or were you just like, did you watch this and go, I didn't like that, or did you watch and go, it wasn't as good as say, some of the others?
It's definitely like, okay, after the first two,
After
which
Beyond
really
the
had
Killer
like,
Rift, buddy.
yeah, which has such a great point. I mean, I like there's a part where the civilization, it's constantly evolving very quickly, and then at one point it becomes pure energy and just disappears to like start anew.
Yeah, which is fun.
Which is fine, but I ended up just kind of feeling bad for the actors because they obviously had to just pretend there were a lot of things around them.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, this must be like being in the prequels or something.
You can feel it's the one live action one, and you can tell. But even when compared to other cheesy live action kind of, even things like this, like Indian in the Cupboard, that old movie, or like Honey, I Shrunk Ourselves kind of stuff, like it's still funny. It's still appreciated. And especially, like we've said, we'll say again time and time, is that a lot of this stuff is really dark. So if you have one where it's just Topher Grace and they're, oh, we have a little civilization in our fridge, it's better than some of like the brain rotting horror that comes later on.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move on. Next episode, Sunny's Edge.
Sunny's Edge, good.
This one, very, very intense. Great music, kind of like dark cyberpunk world where people watch these pit fights between these kind of like organic created creatures, and there's humans
like Mortal Kombat with monsters.
Yeah, where humans pilot them, and there's sort of the main character has some kind of edge, and they go, oh, it's because she was raped or attacked, and that's what she just wants to get revenge on these people.
She's
and that's
too brutal.
Yeah, she's so brutal. And I thought that this one, I mean, like the vibe of it, the cyberpunk vibe was really cool. There was lots to look at. This is one I'd watch again because there's a lot to check out. And then sort of the big twist of it is that because they try to trap her and kill her, they like smash her head and they realize she's the robot. Actually, the real person is now inside the monster's body.
Sunny was the monster the whole time.
She's risking her life, which is what gives her the edge. This one I like because, like a lot of these, are very male gazy. I mean, there's like a like kind of a lesbian nice sex scene and stuff, or like a kissing scene. I like that the girl kind of got the revenge.
Yeah, sure. This is one of those ones you said that you're not too hot on a lot of the action ones. This is one of those ones where the premise is pretty strong, and a lot of the filling time there is like, the bloody fights, and then there's a little bit, but it's a lot of the payoff is the twist. For me, I like the action. I like the gore. It's very, very startling and kind of in your face gore. I like fighting stuff too. Like I said, I'm a big fan of Mortal Kombat. Check out our Mortal Kombat videos, by the way. And yeah, so this one worked for me. I didn't like it as much as other people like it. Some people like really think this is the best that Love, Death, and Robots has to offer. It's up there. Yeah, well, and that's kind of the thing with this whole entire series, is that it really depends on personal preference. If you're someone who likes, this animation style or this one, you'll like this episode more. Everyone has different tastes, but if you're into sci-fi, I think Sunny's Edge is like a good story. Yeah,
to me, this was sort of like cyberpunk Godzilla. Yeah, and the really dark. This is definitely one of the best episodes, but you have to be into darker stuff.
Yeah, you have to like gore. You have to like kind of disturbing. Like you said, there's mentions of sexual violence and stuff like that. It's a lot of heavy stuff all thrown in at once, but I like it. As far as the other gorier ones, this is one of my favorites out of the list. What do we have next?
Next up, buddy boy, is one of my favorites, When the Yogurt Took Over.
This is also one of my favorites. Matt, what's it about?
This is
Tell them all about it.
Very simple premise. Yogurt becomes super intelligent. Yep. And it is so smart that it solves things like fusion. It offers to solve... What I love about good sci-fi is when they use logic to explore these fantastical ideas. So if the yogurt was really smart, what's the smartest way? Because it's just yogurt. You could easily eat it or throw it in the garbage. So it offers something. And what it does is it goes to the president and say, like, we'll fix things, but we want Ohio. Now, America.
Shouts out Ohio.
Now, you're from Ohio, right?
Yeah, buddy.
Okay.
That's why. So when, I was like, lol, yogurt, Ohio.
Because Ohio is
in.
like, you might as well say Idaho or
It's
Utah.
corn.
You're like, no one's really going to object to giving up Idaho or Ohio. Any of those.
I live in Ohio, and if they wanted to give it to the yogurt, I'd be like, I understand.
You'd get
it's
it.
all right.
Yeah. It's not like we want New York or California or something. So
from Ohio or Wisconsin or something. Lose the cheese. I don't know.
And then they also give them this plan, and they say, if you follow this exactly, you will be out of debt. But they know that the humans won't follow it exactly, and they end up like being plummeted into a dystopian society. And in the end, the yogurt provides them with this incredible, beautiful, like Star Trek utopia. But
Very
the
funny.
caveat is like, well, the yogurt controls us. It's not bad. And it's just such a great commentary on like our world now. We, for the most part, if you live in North America, you probably have a pretty good life. You can have a smartphone. You have utilities and stuff.
Yeah.
As long as you don't mind, like bowing down to Amazon and Walmart and.
But would you bow down to yogurt in exchange for those things in perpetuity? That's like the question. The thing about the yogurt episode that I really like is just how straightforward, and it's very cut and quick, and it's telling you the facts. It's like, this is how the yogurt took over. Like, this is how, and it's just like Matt said, progressively sillier and sillier, but it also is very logical. And it's one of those ones where you don't have to like really do a bunch of mental jumping jacks to kind of make sense of the narrative. It's there. It's funny. Yogurt wants Ohio. Shouts out. And it's good. Like you said too, I think in the other video, it's like very family friendly. It's
absolutely.
One that
yep.
Your kids are like, what are you watching?
Teenagers could get into it as like learning about kind of the philosophy, and first year college kids be like, yeah, that's right, man. Bring down you're all already in this world.
You're already blinded by the yogurt of capitalism.
And then at my age, I go like, I know we are, and I'm not going to change the world. So yeah, I like yogurt.
Some people thought that this one was a little cringy or a little stupid, and to that I say,
really?
Lighten up, guys. Not everything has to be Sunny's heads decapitated.
Oh my God!
Sometimes the yogurt wants Ohio.
That's funny. Like the ones that are so like violent and slicing stuff and like titties everywhere. I think that's kind of cringy because that's very juvenile. Like this is what I like about this is it's not only funny, but all of it holds together because this would happen. If they gave you fusion,
sentient, yes,
and they gave you a way to get out of debt, we'd all give it a chance. And like, this is so brilliant. To me, this is basically a masterpiece, this episode.
I was like, Matt, watch Love, Death, and Robots. You're really going to like all the gore. And you're sitting there watching the yogurt episode. You're like, my world is changed. This is media, baby. Now this is content. We should just do a whole episode on the yogurt episode.
Okay, well, we've talked a lot about these ones because I really enjoy them.
We got a lot to go.
Let's move on to The Secret War. All right, this is sort of like a USSR.
This one it's essentially like just another zombie kind of monsters coming. It's very violent. It's very gory. I watched this, and when I rewatched it, and my feelings on it were the same as they were when I first watched it. Is that the animation's cool? Like if you're into gore and kind of just like the bloody body horror, it's got some cool stuff. It's very dark at points. The thing that really sticks out to me is when it all hits the fan. You have like this big group of soldiers fighting these monsters in the Siberian wilds or wherever it's out in the snowy wherevers. There's everyone's dying, and one dude just fucking shoots himself in the head instead of fighting. And it gets like really dark. But beyond that, it was kind of like at some points I'm like, this is a little slow. But at the same time, if you're into like, a bunch of humans like Call of Duty zombie fighting, like it's got some cool moments like that. But as far as this one goes, it's kind of just like, I could take it or leave it, but it's fun.
Yeah, I felt like it was very.
Fun's the wrong. Sorry.
Well, actually, the action and the war stuff is fine. Emotionally, I felt it was really anticlimactic because the Air Force kind of comes in and kills them anyway after they sacrifice themselves. I guess in this it's about, I would assume, the reality of war and the effect on the actual humans involved in the war. Because although you're fighting these like fantastical monsters, it's a really realistic depiction.
You could substitute it for humans and it would be the same story. It's just who do you see as the enemy? So maybe that's what they're trying to go for.
Yeah, who's the real enemy, man?
But it's really kind of trapped in some of like the horror, more horror cliches, and it's all right though. Like I'm not gonna say it's bad because it's not. It's like the animation's really good. Some of the violence is like startlingly real, and you're like wow. But at the end of the day, like it's not really rewatchable. And you're like, oh, that was so much fun. Like, not a yogurt.
I don't feel like there's something else that I wouldn't bother telling somebody that you need to watch it, but it's not bad.
A lot of people like this one a lot, and maybe it's just because a lot of people like Call of Duty and like, you know, kind of depraved violence. It's not even depraved though, so it's not like at the bottom of my list, but it's not super at the top. I like it, but you know.
Well, this next one is the first one that I thought, this is Sucker of Souls.
Sure.
To me, I thought this one was childish and cheesy. I don't know if I was just missing out on like, what is the point? Also, keep in mind, this is only like the 5th episode, and all the ones before it had like really strong thematic ideas.
Yeah, this one's just kind of like a archaeological dig, and they uncover some sort of monster.
Yeah,
right?
There's a lot of like stupid pussy jokes. They shoot something in the dick.
Because there's cats, and so they're talking, say pussy, ha ha ha. Yeah, I get what you're saying. And it feels like a cartoon for kids, but then it's not, because it's very violent when they're doing like the fights and stuff. Yeah. But now even I just watched this a few days ago. I'm really struggling to remember like characters or really
there's just kind of like a team. There's an old guy. There's like a rough and tumble guy. There's a kid, and all they really do is just kind of run around and shoot and make stupid jokes. Like they're
trying to find some sort of artifact in these caverns, and then shit goes to hell, and then that's that. I mean, it has some, like a lot of these episodes, it has some scenes that are cool to watch, like a lot of very fluid animated violence and action, but it's not enough to hold up the kind of mediocre premise, you know?
Absolutely.
But if you're into tomb raiding and supernatural monsters, it's at least worth a watch.
Yeah. And I get there's probably going to be people that, the ones that, for me, if the story and the twist doesn't hit, the action's probably not going to carry it for me. So
sure. What's the next one? I hate to feel like we're really skipping over these, especially if you guys watch these and you really liked them. But understand there's 18. We're not trying to go for like an hour and a half.
Okay. Well, I'll say something good. I did like the animation. Like it's hand drawn. It's really quite nice. Yeah. But I just don't think that the animation even fits what characters are doing or talking about.
Sure. I just don't want people to watch this and be like, well, Sucker of Souls is my favorite, and these guys shit on it and didn't like it. Like, in reality, like, I enjoy most all of these episodes. If I don't like anything, it's only like a few little aspects of it, but I think they're all worth the watch. And if someone's like, Sucker of Souls is my favorite, I'm like, that's cool. You know, I can understand why you would like it. So I don't want anyone watching this and thinking, oh, they only talked about my favorite episode for a minute and then went on to the next one. It's more like there's 18 episodes. We're going to gush about the ones I really like, you know.
And I know, and if you do really like this, I would love for you to explain something that I'm missing. Because maybe
drop
I did.
in the comments. Drop in the comments, boys and girls.
All right, next up on this list of ours is
about a third of the way through.
Suits.
I like Suits. Suits is it's kind of like the Red War one. It's just a group of people fighting against monsters, but instead of it being very like kind of war and everything is dead, it's like this nice little group of farmers who are trying to fight off aliens as they come in through this breach. A lot of action heavy stuff. You got like 3 main characters in their mech. One chick who has this big heavy mech. You know, a guy who's using like a laser cannon, and a lot of it is just cool visuals. They try to do some character building with like their families and stuff, and there's a nice little twist there towards the end. Some people don't like this one, or they say it's a little simple, but I like it. I also like the animation style. It kind of looks like a very fluid Telltale game, if anyone's ever played those. So that did a lot for me. And I like mechs fighting monsters, so it worked for me. But as far as like the narrative complexity of this one goes, it's not as crazy as the other ones. But
the monsters look incredibly like Tyranid from Warhammer, or the Zerg, or Starship Troopers.
The very first enemies you fight in like Borderlands, just like these little scorpion 4-legged kind of shelled dudes.
Yeah, arachnid, H.R. Geiger kind of stuff.
They're also not super inspired.
And the music really made me think of StarCraft, because it's that sort of like down home kind of industrial blues guitar. And just kind of their idea of being like, because StarCraft paints the Terrans as kind of like, they're just kind of Americana truckers.
Yeah.
And I think they pulled that off. What I liked about this one is that even though everything is quite predictable, once you realize what the premise is, that like the ideas of like introducing this character, and then we see them. At first, it's very mundane. They're just killing aliens, and then all of a sudden, it becomes much more than they can handle.
The stakes feel real. That's one of the things I noticed. It's like, even though it's only so short, I was kind of emotionally invested in the characters. I totally
was. I was totally bought in. And even though it was incredibly predictable, you go like, oh, this guy's going to sacrifice himself. They're going to come back. And like,
this
even
guy's
the music
they used.
Dead. Yeah, it was almost like an exercise in like, how do you make a like American Hollywood feel-good action movie? But it totally worked for me.
Yeah. So once again, Suits go watch it. It's a good one if you're not quite sure what you want to watch with Love, Death, and Robots, or if you're looking for one to rewatch. Suits. Now, if you're watching this, you probably watched Love, Death, and Robots, but Suits I thought was like good middle of the road kind of stuff.
This next one we didn't talk about in our top 5, but I think is a really good honorable mention. This is Witness.
Yeah, if you've ever played Spider-Man, Miles Morales, if you watch that movie, similar animation because it's like very abrupt. It's very in your face. Looking
like
for
Into
the word
the Spider-Verse?
Yeah, there's some parts of Into the Spider-Verse where they use that. There was also the Watch Dogs Legion trailer for that not very good game.
Yeah,
had the same.
There was also like a Keanu Reeves movie, I think, like Scanner Darkly, that was similar to this. This is sort of like a hybrid of putting animation over real people. And then also trying to use like playing with the frames, the frame rates, and like camera perspectives. So it's like real people with animation on them, and then also trying to give it this like really cool comic book feel.
Sure. It was, and the story is what? Just like the
story is the very beginning. There's she's like an exotic dancer. She's getting ready for work. She hears of a murder, and they cut to it. She sees the person murdering them.
Yeah.
And you can kind of tell that it looks like her. Then the whole episode is basically this guy chasing her. She's running for her life through this kind of like...
It's like a 10-minute chase scene.
Yeah. Through this kind of like very modern, I guess like a Tokyo kind of place.
Yeah.
And then the whole twist is that when he reaches her, she ends up killing him. She looks down and sees him. He's in the other place. So now they've swapped places.
It's like Deathloop, the game that isn't out yet on PlayStation 5.
Yeah.
That's a weird... I don't know why I said that.
Well, there's a death and there's a loop. So you said the two words. I feel like it was... At first I thought...
the idea. It was just a lot on the eyes for me. It was very like... It's like, ow. Like
I enjoyed that.
Well, I could, give or take. It's what you like. I enjoy the idea of it. It's just at some points, especially if you've been playing games for 10 hours and you've been staring at screens, you're like, this is so much at once and a lot. But it's effective. There's
a lot of blurring the camera. It's very erratic. It's sort of like constantly shifting. So I think your brain doesn't know what works.
Yep.
I felt like it explored an interesting metaphor of maybe women fearing a city and men, or like being trapped in a nightmare where somebody's going to find you no matter what. There's a ton of
self-fulfilling anxiety or kind of like that. Yeah.
There's a ton of female nudity in it. And then
very male gazy, like you said before. Yeah.
And I also felt like I don't quite understand the premise. It's an interesting idea. And I understand the premise, but I don't really get the point.
Yeah. Like it was a fun watch. It was engaged. And I think with the erratic visual style, it's enough to at least keep your brain occupied. So even if the story's not enough, you're just like, whoa, what is this? This is like a very unique visual kind of way of doing things. And it resonated with me. I think that's the one thing when I think of The Witness, I'm like, oh yeah, the one that was visually crazy, like more so than many of the others.
And I think it's worth a watch. I don't think it really lands its idea, but I appreciate how it looks and everything that happens. So, but let's move on to one that I know you're a big fanboy of.
Yeah.
This is Good Hunting.
Dude, Good Hunting is so good. It's some good hunting. It's like anime visuals. There's this young boy named Liang, and he lives in kind of like this very traditional village. And then there's a rise of machines, and he becomes like an engineer. He likes making automatons, which are basically all mechanical machines. He befriends a wood spirit named Yan, and then she's like not understanding the rise of future, but he's like, let me, I want to change some of you. And it shifts from this very like fluid, windy kind of Japanese thing to like a fierce, futuristic cyberpunk world.
Yeah, because when it starts off, the son and his father, they're bounty hunters, and these women are like, they can, if you look at them, they'll seduce you, where you'll do anything for them, and people are in love with them. Actually, this is the one time there was like a guy who was naked, and they've kind of tied him down, so he's sort of like can't help himself. Yeah, he's like. So
female gazy, is that a thing?
Yeah, I thought that this one was a little better because it kind of empowered the women, and then you realize that they can look like women, they transform into small cats, or they can get caught in the middle. There's a lot of cool samurai duel stuff, and then the first kind of twist. This one handles a lot of stuff. The first twist is that the cat person, because her mom gets killed by this guy's dad, she goes, well, they were actually in love, and the boy says, how could you? That's not real love. You're just like a seductress, right? So it's that's the first time where you see this kind of racism or like speciesism, and sort of like maybe the people who are fighting aren't doing it for the right reasons. And then it goes into the part you're explaining where there's like lots of technology, steampunk.
She becomes kind of like imprisoned by this big fat dude who like cuts off pieces of her body. Like there's some very effective,
that's like one of the last twists. Yeah.
Yeah, and grotesque kinds of animation there. I think Good Hunting for me is just like it dealt with so much, like you said, and it visually impressed me. Like the animation, I give a lot of shit to different animes and cartoons for not having like a very high frame rate. If that's, like it's this was just beautiful. Everything was animated so well. Like the gore that was there was shot. And that's not a real word. You know what I'm saying? It just was very effective the way they showed it. And at the end of it, like I felt like, I think you mentioned this in another episode or video we did, is that it felt like 3 or 4 episodes of a TV show. Like I felt very satisfied that I got a lot of content, a lot of things to think on. And for someone who usually doesn't really enjoy a lot of anime, like, or a lot of that kind of style of anime, I was into it.
Yeah, it was a really beautiful sort of like steampunk, like all the technology is done with gears and kind of like tinkering. They end up going to a place where the English people rule and they're very racist to the Chinese. So now I think it deals with themes of sort of...
it's a lot.
Yeah, there's like the oppressors, technology. She's a wood spirit who her magic is dwindling because of technology.
Yep.
There's a lot to take in, and I felt like it still ended up... It kind of started off at one point, zigzagged a million times, but then when you got to the end and you zoomed out, you go, oh, it actually was a complete circle.
Yeah.
So
I think as far as storytelling goes, it's probably one of the strongest out of all of them. And it's that thing for me that, like, if you usually don't like a genre or don't like a certain kind of animation or storytelling, and then you find a piece that really resonates with you, it's almost better than the rest. So for me, not being a huge anime fan, like that stuff, since it was kind of anime directed, I was like, oh, wow, I get this. Like, so I really appreciated not only the story for what it was, but the art and kind of the amount of time that must go into animating that or making those creative decisions. I really respected it for that. So yeah, Good Hunting up there.
Okay, next one up is...
This is one of your favorites, right? Isn't it?
No, yeah.
I have no clue what's next.
This one I did not like at all.
Yeah.
This is The Dump.
The Dump. Yeah, this was... I have a ranking list on my website. If you guys want to check it out, Super Games Site 64. Type in Love, Death, and Robots. This is the bottom of the list. And this is one of those that teeters there. Like, you might just be worth a pass. Like, it's part monster movie, part, like, gross out, slapstick humor.
Yeah.
It's a dude owns a dump, and then a guy comes in, he's like, you selling the dump? And he's like, I got a monster. There's a wiener hanging there at some point, and you're like, oh, gross.
Yeah, there's sort of an old hillbilly guy. The corporate city man comes. He's trying to convince him to either like sell the place or they're going to shut it down. He's the inspector. Yeah. And then he tells him a story of when his other hillbilly friend were there. A lot of nudity, talking about horrors. He has a sex doll. And then
it felt like really, it's not cringe, but it was just like, man, this isn't great dialogue. This isn't like great characterization. The animation style was like the animation itself, the visuals looked pretty decent.
Really good, yeah.
Yeah, but like it lacked the inspiration that other stories did, and then the monster itself, like this, like a garbage dump monster kind of thing.
Yeah, no,
it was okay.
Like that had potential. Okay, so they discover that there's this monster, and the monster is everything that's ever been there. And twice in the episode, he says, "Why do I need anything in the outside world? Everything will eventually come to me." So
yeah, exactly.
Like, what are you saying? Is like we don't value garbage, and we should, and it's going to rise up and kill us. Okay,
maybe we're looking too deeply into it. Maybe it's just about a guy and he has a garbage dump monster. But this is one of those ones that I didn't feel the need to think that far. I was like, not worth it. If Beyond the Aquila Rift or a Good Hunting, I'm going to sit there and process it for 10, 15 minutes, think about the scenes I liked. But this one I was like, whatever. It's okay. Garbage dump. I like monster movie stuff, so that part kind of worked for me. But without the monster, I was meh. Like you said, a lot of it just kind of cringe. Kind of meh.
All right. Well, let's go on to this one that's a bit more impressive. This
Sorry is to steamroll you, Matt.
Shapeshifters.
Okay. Yeah. See, I didn't like this one as much.
Oh, interesting. I thought you would have liked it because this was about kind of a lot of things.
It's like Call of Duty cross Mortal Kombat cross werewolves. The thing that didn't work for me is I thought the characters were very wooden, and that kind of came out in the animation, but like the way they looked. But the fights and the gore and that kind of stuff, very well done. I didn't buy into this story.
So yeah, the premise of it is that they're in the Afghanistan war. They now allow werewolves into it, but the humans are racist towards the werewolves, And then there ends up being the
course.
Taliban having a werewolf, and then
Of
a friend dies. There's an epic werewolf fight that is so
That's very
gruesome.
cool. Yeah, it's very good.
And then in the end, there's sort of this message of like the guy ripping off his dog tag and saying, he's like, I'm no longer going to wear your leash.
So this is like, it does the same kind of things that almost Red War is trying to do, or the Secret War with the guys fighting. But it's like, it feels, I don't want to say exploitative because that's the wrong word, but like, I'm like, guys, you're kind of using the Afghanistan war, which is the war on terror, which is not a great, there's a lot of things wrong with that conflict. I'm not going to get into politics,
but I think
like,
that's perfect. Like, I think that's what they're getting at, is that all this death in a war that doesn't need to happen.
Maybe the way they were trying to send that message came across a little blunt for me. Like you said, it's all very like, of course they're going to be racist because the werewolves, because of racism and the
werewolves being hairy like Middle Eastern people.
Yeah. Oh my fucking God. Yeah, I can say that.
Yeah.
You can say that. I'm part Syrian over here, boys. Yeah.
I'm Hungarian.
Nice, dude. Well, I'm glad I'm not werewolf because I didn't want to get ripped in half like that fight is crazy. I will say the shapeshifters fight is pretty good. Respect to the people who animated that. Yeah, it's like a lot of penis in this one. This is one of the few that doesn't have female nudity,
gazy. But it's very it's brutal. So if you like if you think Freddy Krueger versus Jason is awesome,
watch this shit.
I think you could at least watch the fight. Is pretty wild.
Yeah. If you're worried about your own sexual preferences, just skip over the wieners, you insecure weirdos.
All right.
I don't know. You keep bringing up how much. Now that we go back, like I think there's like an equal amount of male and female nudity in this.
But I think you made a good point. Is that usually the female stuff is like, let's make us look as good as possible, and the male stuff is either kind of a joke or. And this one actually I think is good because it's just there. It would make sense. Yeah. You're a werewolf. Your clothes are going to get ripped off.
Yeah, exactly.
So show me that cock. All right, next one is. You said a lot of people didn't like this one. This is Fish Night.
Not that people didn't like it as much as that, similar to like we were saying with The Dump, the sentiment is that there wasn't a lot there narratively. For me, I'm a big fan of it.
There's not really a big twist. It's very simple.
Yeah.
A young guy and an old guy, traveling salesman, they crash.
Father and son.
They're father and son?
Yeah, they're father and son. Car breaks down out in the middle of nowhere.
And car breaks down. He's kind of negative about it. He kind of blames him. They have to wait all night, and he talks about how like
the whole canyon used to be underwater.
Yeah.
Says, years ago it used to be. And he says, you know how ghosts of people haunt the places they used to live? Well, how come animals don't haunt the places of where? And then the next scene, now we have all these brightly colorful underwater creatures, and that's really it. Like that's.
Yeah. No. I enjoyed this because I liked the animation and it was pretty breezy. But what I think it failed at, and it kind of annoys me because I think there's a lot of potential, is what's the point? Because, all right, the old guy's saying we're a dying breed, us old guys. So maybe they're dinosaurs, like these dinosaurs that are ghosts. But the son's like, no way. It's all about your perspective. We can keep it going. But then
he whimsically jumps out and becomes a fish ghost and then gets eaten.
But then he gets eaten.
So it's like the whimsical or the fleeting idea or fleeting brilliance of youth, maybe. But even for me, like I like this episode, but that's because I like giant fish monsters.
Yeah,
because I'm vastly afraid of the ocean, and I don't like.
I thought you were going to say I'm half Syrian, half fish.
Yeah, you never would have expected me with this human skin, but I'm amongst all of you. Gills out. No. The thing is that I just like people who are afraid of ghosts, but like watching ghost movies. Like I appreciate the artistic nature of making a really cool big sea monster, and plus the visuals. It's very colorful. It goes from like this very daytime kind of stark white, it is what it is, to this very rainbow full nighttime full of all these ghosts. Yeah, exactly. So I appreciated that, but as far as the story goes, like the plot's thin.
The story's lacking. Here's what I would have done is. When the son jumps in there and goes away and the older guy's like, no, don't go. The son should have flourished. He should have flourished because the old man's like, we're a dying breed. The son says, no, it's on how you look at it. Oh, and the old man, I'm afraid of fish ghosts. And the son goes away. He should have flourished. And the old man should have been left alone with a crappy car, no son, and like all that gone. But instead the son gets eaten. So it's like, what's the lesson?
I agree with you. I feel like your version is actually darker, but would work way better. And then they just went for the death part of Love, Death, and Robots, because without him getting eaten, this is not Love, Death, nor is it Robots. It's just weird ghost sci-fi supernatural stuff.
They could just give the old guy a heart attack at the end.
Yeah, he just kills himself or something terrible. Because why not? It's TV mature.
All right,
watch
next
it
one.
if you like visuals.
This one is called Helping Hand.
I like this.
It's basically sort of if Gravity was a horror movie. An astronaut gets stuck, stranded in space, running out of oxygen. They're not going to be able to rescue her for 30 minutes. She has 15 minutes. She comes up with the idea of using physics that if she has something to throw, it'll push her backwards to her ship. So she goes,
what can she throw?
Yeah, I'll take off my sleeve and I'll suffer the cold pain of space. And I don't quite understand how that works, but I liked it. And then her arm freezes so much she needs one more and she rips off the arm. Yeah. It's a real simple kind of gory, like, oh my God.
It's an isolated story. You know, it's just about this chick in space. She has this problem. There ain't no one coming to help you. You're miles away from whatever. You got to do what you got to do. Like that story of 127 hours, the guy who had to cut off his arm to get out of the boulder thing. Yeah. That's a real story. It's similarly like that, but like you said, a lot of the payoff is like, ew, she's crunching off her arm. Take it or leave it. I like it because I like space stuff, and I thought it was an effective suspense, kind of like, oh. But like you said, like, yeah, I don't know if you can actually do that. Can you just throw your own broken arm, and then it's like, now you're floating to safety?
When I watched it, I was bought in. I was like, oh, that's cool. Sure, like reverse thrust, and you're making a sacrifice, and it's sci-fi, and I like
you're not like crunching numbers over here. Like,
and it also didn't overstay its welcome, which I really liked.
Most of these episodes don't. So if you're like, that's dumb, by the time you have that thought, you're like, and we're on to the next one, which is what we're doing. What's the next one?
The next one, big boy, is, hang on a second here.
No, it's fine.
Oh, this one, I think you said maybe some people did not like this one. This is Alternate Histories. I like this one because it reminded me, this was kind of like the yogurt episode. It's a quirky, really quick animation. It's
cartoonish.
Sort of like, yeah, it's very cartoony. It's sort of it's an AI or whatever, like a program that's able to imagine.
It's a new app where you can look through the lens of history in different multi-universes, and this specific application or this like kind of tutorial or video about the
popular one
app
that people want to know
is how different versions of Hitler died. So it's like 5 or 4 self-contained, a little gag, like, oh, Hitler dies, and everyone fuck Hitler, so no one cares, and it's jokey. I don't think people didn't like it as much as they just thought that it probably didn't have as much depth. Kind of like we were talking about with Fish Night. It ain't no Beyond the Killer Rift. It's just Hitler dying. But here's the thing, guys. Say this loud, say this proud. I could watch Hitler die all goddamn day. So you can give me 4 more of those episodes, but I just want it to be more. In fact, I liked the premise of the episode, the idea that there's this app that lets you look into different universes and stuff, but that they just chose to kind of go for this jokey, we're going to kill Hitler a bunch because fuck Hitler. But like, you can do more with that. I feel like that's the part that was lacking for me, but what it was fine.
What I liked about it is that it felt like the yogurt episode in where it had a tight premise and it wrote it really tightly and it all made sense and it was really quick and it was pretty funny. And like,
it just big worked. Jello dropped on him and he suffocates to death.
Yeah, the gelatin comes in. It was all that stuff. It was like using sci-fi and animation to do anything and have a wild idea, but actually following it through logically.
Yeah.
And always ending the simulation with the Americans do land on the moon in 1969, or maybe the Germans land on the moon, or maybe
it's some changes something.
Yeah.
There's a whole post-apocalyptic nothingness or something.
I really enjoyed this one. I think this one is actually really strong because this is not easy this isn't just saying a bunch of random stuff.
It's a quick one too. This one's like like yogurt.
Quick,
it's like 8 minutes.
And all of it to me like strings together makes perfect sense.
When I say that I heard some people didn't like it, I think the better term is that some people just thought it was of the weaker. Because like many of these episodes, even if you're thinking it's not as strong as other ones, it's still fun. Like I said, it's a nice 8 minutes. Like Matt was saying, it's quirky. It's up there, so I appreciate it from that perspective. I didn't think it was bad at all. I hope for like volume 2 they go into that idea of like the multiverse and how the butterfly effect, one small difference can change. That's the stuff I really appreciate about it. And if there was anything I thought was lacking, I was just like, oh, give me more of that. Less of like the silliness. But
well, before we talk about the last few episodes, let's talk a little bit about Netflix. And you know what I like about Netflix is that they're cold. And they cancel stuff. If it's halfway through a season and they think this isn't working or people aren't watching it, they cut it, and it sucks for the people that were into it. They renewed this, but they only renewed 8 episodes. And to me,
But
I
there
think
is
there were
a volume
probably
3. There is a volume 3, so maybe they're just splitting them and being asses. Who knows?
That's much worse. See, I thought
Yeah,
it was
because
just going to
there's
be
18 episodes in the
okay.
first volume. The second volume is going to have 8, and then they said, "Hey, volume 3 is coming in 2022." So the cynic in me is saying they have 15 or 16 episodes. They're
Oh,
cutting it.
that's so lame. See,
But your
I thought that
point
Netflix was
stands.
going, okay, there were probably 8 pretty good episodes, so we'll just cut all the crap, but okay,
I
you
feel like
shot my
what's going to
theory down.
really, sorry, Matt. I feel like what's going to happen is this next season we're going to have probably 5 really good ones and 3 okay ones,
Yeah.
and then they're just balancing it out. But you're not wrong. Like
But they
Netflix,
probably looked at the figures and they go, nobody watches 18 episodes of anything.
no, yeah, exactly.
So they're like, people can't handle it. Like they have, I think, like the
Well,
stats
18
they have
episodes for one
access to.
anthology is way too much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas like a Black Mirror, people like 4 or 5 episodes. But you're not wrong. Like we were talking before this video started, I was saying, hey, Altered Carbon, you should watch that. But they canceled it. So what can you do? So Netflix, they aren't afraid to be like, oh, we didn't get 9 million people watch it, only 8 million. You're done. Like.
Yeah, they're cold, and I think you kind of have to be like that. This one I wanted to talk about because we have only 3 more to go.
Ooh,
Lucky
final 3.
13.
This one, I back and forth on it. What's the premise, Matt?
The premise is there's a pilot. They're in sort of like a futuristic war. People are flying these ships. Lucky 13 is the only ship that has like survived 3 different missions where all of the crew have died. So people think it might be a bit unlucky. Also, it has the number 13 written twice and the digits on it add up to 13. The pilot takes it and has an incredible string of luck. It survives everything with it. In the end, I guess the ship kind of has a mind of its own.
Yeah, that's kind of
There's
where
like
the
this
end.
weird sacrifice where
I
the
love
ship.
you, humans, and it blows itself up, right?
Yeah, I just felt like it doesn't. The action was okay.
Sure.
The animation was fine. I just think there wasn't really much of like a twist, and it didn't really do any one thing notably. There's really nothing notable about it.
I liked Lucky 13 because it goes into superstition, which other episodes don't really do. I also liked the fact that there were starship battles because other episodes go more for like hand-to-hand combat gore, like a Sunny's Edge or Red Army or a Suits. So I like that there was a bit more high sci-fi, some Star Warsy shit there. I appreciated the visual effects. I thought it was solid.
Yeah, it looked
but like you
great.
said, yeah, and so the storytelling was a little meh, but I like the idea of, are we just surviving this? It also gives some nice stakes there to the story, because if you don't buy in that the ship is supernatural, any of these missions, they could really die immediately. And with these episodes being so short, you never know, like, the whole entire crew could die right here. And so it did cut me on my toes in that regard. But by the end, once the credits rolled, you're like, okay, it was what it was. I like it, but it's what you're saying, Matt, I 100% understand. Like, it's kind of it. Jack of all trades, master of none, almost.
Yeah. Let's go with the second to last, the penultimate episode in the Canadian Netflix listing of
Thanks,
this.
Canada.
It is Blind Spot. Now, this is another one where I felt like this was totally fine. There's a bunch of sort of, I guess they're cyborgs. They're doing some kind of heist.
It's like Mega Man on steroids.
Yeah, Mega Man. I kind of got like a Biker Mice from Mars vibe from it, like 90s cartoon.
Yep.
I was so bored with this one. I just felt, maybe it was because I'd watched 18 or 16 episodes or whatever.
This is, I was
maybe
imagining with your order at a certain point, because my final one was the Secret Zombie War, and that one felt really long. When I went and rewatched it, I was like, okay, I can understand. It was definitely, after watching 18 episodes straight, you're like, kind of whatever. Blind Spot is that it's just a group of cybernetic cyborg people who are trying to pull off a heist, and the twist is, they have checkpoints. They die in the end, but they all respawn and they're fine. And so it's just, the episode is to service the action. There's some fun animated, like I said, Mega Man-y, futuristic gadget fighting and some high speed action stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it kind of self-contained. Whereas other episodes leave you questioning reality and philosophy and your thoughts for 30 minutes. This one, you're like, cool, Mega Man, kill.
And the animation in it is gorgeous.
Yes.
And it's fun to look at, and but I just felt like it just doesn't have any kind of a real point to it, and I never felt any kind of tension with the action. I wasn't worried about anybody, and then kind of the crux of it, in the end is that, yeah, nobody's worried about anything. But okay, the twist is for the young kid who doesn't know that they download their brains, but you are a cyborg anyway. So this has never come up in your entire life.
I feel like the more we talk about this, and before we get into this final one, which is a big one, I feel like this is kind of 50-50 that Love, Death, and Robots has an over-under. Either it's just there for entertainment factor, for spectacle, for the wow, ooh, wow, popcorn film stuff, or it's actually trying to make a point or a message. And sometimes episodes try and don't succeed. But since Love, Death, and Robots is a compilation that's made by different directors, different animator styles, some of it's adapted screenplays. Like I was saying, Beyond the Killer Rift is an adapted short story. Some of it is just like maybe an idea somebody had for a fun animation.
Yeah.
Maybe not all of them are trying to be these big things. So when you stack up a Blind Spot versus a Killer Rift or a Good Hunting, you're like, well, that one was a little bit shallow. But this one definitely falls into like the eye candy stuff because the animation's crazy. And if you're like a gamer
it's beautiful.
and you like kind of, the hectic, eclectic gadgetry of gaming and stuff, you're like, oh, this feels like that's why I said Mega Man. It has nothing to do with Mega Man. Yeah, exactly.
It's pretty gorgeous.
It's not the worst. It's not the best, but it's fun.
So after Blind Spot, Lucky 13, Alternate Histories I liked. Helping Hand was good. They had a good way of putting the ones I didn't really like in the middle. When we built up, and I was kind of thinking, all right, this
you've seen the best.
They're not going to blow me away anymore. They did with the finale being
which is
Zima Blue. Now Zima Blue, I think, encapsulates everything this series does so well. It's a commentary on our society. It's a commentary on art. Like when you see that this artist is making these gigantic murals, but then puts a blue square. So he's like, it's in the future. The entire world is into his art. And he puts a blue square or a blue rectangle on all the pieces. And nobody knows why, but it's a big deal. Yep. And you think, yeah, sometimes you just see artists and they go, oh my God, it's the purple square artist. They're worth millions.
Sometimes the most simple stuff is seen as art. And it's kind of, that's the whole, not the whole idea of the episode, but part of the idea of the episode is like, well, what is art and what do we perceive as art? Yeah. And he goes from this simple portraiture painting to, well, the blue square gets bigger. And eventually he's just making these murals that are like mountains tall of just these giant blue squares. And it becomes more of like an inventor almost, and like this enigmatic figure where even if you were into the art world, like all of a sudden the Zima Blue guy, he's going out there and he's spraying asteroids with this very specific shade of blue, and he's searching for the truth in it. And it like Matt's saying, it ties up so wonderfully. I get goosebumps. Like, it's, as a writer, dude, it's just so succinct and so beautifully matched with the animation. Like, not only is the story beautiful, but like we've said this in the other episode or other video too, it's just the visuals are so impactful without being busy. It's just very good art. And for it being an episode about the quality of art and what we see as humans, and it's one of those things, like, people have said, oh, they should take Zima Blue and turn it into a movie. Like, no, leave it as a 10-minute short because it's so short, so sweet, so to the point, and it leaves you just going, what? It begets more and more questions, and it's kind of this like psychological exercise. I feel like I'm being so verbose and being like, oh, it's the best thing since sliced bread, but really, seriously, as far as sci-fi goes, Zima Blue, wow.
Yeah, it totally floored me. It was, I actually wrote, the last line I wrote in my review was wow with 6 W's, just like you said. Because by this point I'm like, oh, whatever, I'm just going to see like some cool action and animation. What
else can they throw at you after 17 episodes of every conceivable animation, every supernatural, every bloody kind? What can there be?
So the twist in this is that as an artist, he's constantly he's painting like the solar system, and then he adds a blue thing, and then a bigger blue thing, and then it's all about this blue, and then he converts his body to be able to explore space itself.
And he goes to like this mystical planet and gets a bunch of cybernetic implants there. He doesn't even breathe oxygen anymore. He just like absorbs it through his fibers.
And he's trying to, and what I loved about it is that so many of the episodes in this anthology, even though they're different, the relation they have is this idea of like nature is so purely magical, like the wood, that like sex fairy. Yeah. And then there's also this like technology is kind of ruining that. And what I loved about it is that
chunk kind of.
Yeah, and this artist's whole idea was like, I'm going to do everything I can to immerse myself in the magic of the universe,
find his truth.
Yeah, and he starts telling a story that there was an inventor who created amazing robots and created a robot to clean a pool and got so into this robot cleaning the pool that made the robot even better, and it became able to like learn, and this robot became like a
It's like taking a Roomba and turning into like a sentient like house robot, but you're just like, now let's make it the smartest AI ever.
And then when this inventor dies, the robot kind of gets passed back and forth, and he is this robot, and he's spent his whole life after trying to like get closer to what his creator had made him, and that blue was the color blue of that tile, because it would have been the first thing that he ever saw would be, and just
as a fundamental pool cleaning robot, he would just clean the tiles in her pool, and the one color that he had was Zima blue, is the color of the tile. What's interesting about this is it's told from the perspective of a journalist who's going to see Zima blue and his final thing, and so she says, well, we don't really know where he came from. You know, people said he was a portrait artist. We don't know. And then when he says, well, I was that robot, she goes, no, you're a man who thinks he's a machine, not a machine who thinks he's a man. And he says, even I struggle to understand what I was. So as the viewer, you don't even understand what his origin is. And so it's like this idea of like humanity and technology and the balance of finding the truth. And it's almost like you view it as a human trying to find his own truth, but really the twist is that he was the robot trying to find his truth. And as the blue got bigger in his art, it was like that rudimentary Roomba coming out, his essence. And then he, magically, beautifully just dissolves into the final pool cleaning robot. And that's his last act as an artist. And I was like, goosebumps, man. It's so good.
And he says, what he wants is that he wants to basically devolve. He wants to remove everything that he's become to enjoy the simple pleasures of the blue. And I thought that's so great because
well done.
Because we can use technology. Technology can be great. I mean, it can extend your life if you're going to die. It allows you to speak to a loved one who lives halfway across the world. But at the same time, technology can be so complex and distracting.
And life is so complex too. There's so many things as humans, we're chasing, so many dreams we have. But what if your only directive was just, hey, clean that little spot, and that gives you your whole entire everything. Like the simplification of that, just the idea of like, wouldn't you want to return to that life? If life could be just one task and that was everything you need, no money, no worries, and none of this is explicitly stated in the episode. It's just all inferred by a dude painting blue and then turning into a Roomba. Like,
and then he rips off his dog tags and says, "I'm not going to wear this.
I'm not going to wear yours."
Yeah,
that's okay.
This episode was jaw-dropping. It was stunning. I think it totally encompassed everything that this series does and what sci-fi can do, and discussions of where art meets technology and humanity and the magic of the universe.
I know we're going long, but this is when I say that I have my 1 and 2. It's between Zima Blue and Beyond the Aquila Rift for the same exact reason. It's because they're so effective, but in two completely different ways. Yeah. I will say, as a piece of storytelling and as a visual, Zima Blue gets the edge as far as just longevity, and also it doesn't require any horror elements. It has no horror. It's out of all of it, there's a little bit of death, but it's very much the most robots episode besides like 3 robots, So it really hits those ideas of technology, AI, and humanity so perfectly well. And you can kind of leave the rest of the anthology as its own and just look at Zima Blue as just, I'm not going to say anything that's it's perfect. I don't want to say it's perfect, but it's as damn close as you're going to get for a 10-minute animated, short.
A lot of times I have filmmaker friends and they make short movies, and I think, just make a long movie. Nobody watches short stuff. But like you had said, people want to see this as a movie. I think this only works as a short piece because the magic is in the twist and it not being an hour long. So anyways, that's us reviewing every episode with spoilers of Love, Death and Robots, Volume 1. We're going to be doing Volume 2 when it comes out. We'll have our top 5 with no spoilers and a review of every one of the 8 episodes. Maybe we'll do a top 4 or top 3 with spoilers when that comes out. So Volume 2 comes out Friday, May 14th.
Yep. Be here for it.
You can check out, if you're watching this on YouTube, we have an audio version of podcasts on the 90s Kid Podcast. We have reviews on Mortal Kombat and a bunch of other stuff. All right. Goodbye.
Yeah, hang around. Subscribe. Bye.